What's up, friends? I've done some videos on like the elements of lighting and things like that, but I feel like we need to do something on how to actually control lighting in a studio environment. Specifically, in this case, we're going to be talking about using the ETC Nomad control software. Now, in our studio, we have 10 lights that deal with our green screen area. We have 7 lights in front of us. These lights are our front light, and they also provide some of the light on the green screen itself. We also have 3 lights behind us directly above the screen. Now, these lights serve both as backlight and fill light for the screen. Everything works in conjunction because when you're working with the green screen, flat, balanced lighting with no shadows really is what you're after. Now, with these 10 lights, what you won't see in our studio is any light switches that control these lights, and that's because we use a digital control surface, the ETC Nomad, to speak to our dimmers that then sends signal to our lights. The question you might be asking is, okay, how does that work? Well, a dimmer is just exactly what it sounds like. It is a dimming control device, right? So it controls how much power is going to the light. Your dimmer racks correspond with circuits, either on your grid or on the wall or wherever else you may have those circuits. The circuits then get plugged into lights, and you control the lights via those circuits and dimmers. Like I said, here at ECU, we use the ETC Nomad software to communicate with our dimmers, which is a little different than what you might be used to seeing if you're somewhere else. If you're a little more familiar with like theatrical lighting and things like that, you've probably seen something like this. This is the ETC Ion. This is probably my favorite control board I've ever worked with. I've used a lot of them over the course of my career, but it's old, it's out of date, it's out of service, and I therefore don't really like to trust it with day-to-day use in the studio. Plus, as you can probably see behind me, ours is a little in use for some student projects right now. Since we don't use a actual console in our studio booth at this point, I mean, if we were doing a lot of crazy stuff where lights had to change all the time, I would want a console, but green screen lighting doesn't really offer a lot of opportunities for wild stuff because shadows are a big problem. So rather than use the newer version of the Ion, which is really expensive, we use the, like I've already said, the ETC Nomad software, right? And what that does is it sends a signal from this computer to this little box right here, the ETC gadget, which then translates that signal from USB to DMX, which is the control language and protocol for lighting instruments. Also foggers and hazers and snow machines and some other stuff, but that's lighting for right now. So the question is, if it's that simple, how does it work? Well, let's go through that. Let's say you had to start from complete scratch, and now you need to program this so that it's going to work and actually control lighting. Let's jump in. All right, so the first thing you're going to want to do is, I mean, obviously install the software, but once you've got it installed on your computer, what you'll do is you'll find your shortcut, Launch EOS Family, right? I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And in this case, I'm going to hit Primary. Once this opens up, what you'll see is my patch that I have already got created, this new patch here. This is all existing, right? So let's say you had to start from absolute scratch. You didn't have any lights programmed in or anything. You had to absolutely start from scratch. What you're going to do is hit under File, New. Do you really want to create a new show? Okay. And then now you'll see that those numbers that were previously illuminated and all of that, they've got no information in them because we haven't actually programmed any lights in yet. This is what patching does. This is when you're telling the dimmers and the circuits how to correspond to what channel. So if I come here to patch, you can see channel address, right? Now, if you don't see patch or you don't see any of these menus here, What you can do is you can hit this little plus icon here, and these are all of the different kinds of windows you can have open. The ones I recommend having always, always, always are going to be Live Table, PSD, that's your cue list, and your patch. If you've got color changing lights or moving lights, you want ML controls, the virtual keyboard can be handy, but Live Table, PSD, and patch, those are the ones that you always want to have available to you at all times when using this console. So if I want to address channel 1 to be a specific light, so looking at my lights, I know where my lights are plugged in, and you can see that in the diagram here. But I need to tell the dimmers how to communicate with them, right? So channel 1, which I can access by hitting the 1 key, and you'll see that pops up here. Channel 1's circuit number, its address, is 41. So I'm going to hit A41, enter. And now channel 1 is patched. Like I said, I've got 10 lights. I'm going to go ahead and get all of those patched real quick. So you can see here that I have channel 1 at address 41, channel 2 at 40, 3 at 68, 4 at 69, 5 at 47, 6 at 54, 7 at 61, 8 at 42, 9 at 56, and 10 at 70. Like I said, these numbers, the channel number is the number you're going to press to bring that light up when you're controlling things. But we have now told our control surface, our control software, that channel 1 corresponds with address, with dimmer, with circuit 41. If we were dealing with LED instruments, things like that, we would program this in differently, but let's stick with traditional instruments for right now. So now that I've got all of these instruments patched, if I go to Live Table and I just hit the number 1, the letter T, which you can see brings up through 10, and I hit AF, that's going to bring up at full, and I hit enter. What you'll see is all of our lights come on at full. Now, you can absolutely control individual lights. You don't have to bring all of them up at one time. So if I just, since these are all still selected, you can see they're all selected here, right? If I just hit A0, now they all go out. But if I want to bring up just light 5, I type in 5, AF, and that brings up just light 5. Now, you can use any percentage when you're bringing these lights up, from 0 to 100, right? So if I want to bring up a light at 50% or 35% or 75%, the process is the exact same. You just type in whatever channel it is, A, at whatever percentage you want that light to be, and you can adjust it up and down and do the thing. The thing about studio production is that we're probably not going to be like bouncing one light around at a time very often. So you need to have a way to record these in a way that makes it easy to recall all of them at one time in a given scenario. If we were using an actual Ion XE, I might be using the fader wings and using submasters, but in this case, I'm going to show you how to record a cue. So what we want to do here is I want to record a cue that is the best lighting for my green screen in my studio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say 1, and even though 5 is still on right now, this is totally fine. I'm going to say 1 through 8 plus 10 at full. You'll notice that I'm missing a light here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to say 9A at 45, enter. So now all of my lights exist just like this. They're all of them except for light number 9 are at full. Number 9 is at 45. Why is number 9 at 45, you might ask? The answer to that is because honestly, that light is the one directly in the middle of my green screen, and it's a little too close to it. I need to pull it back a little bit so I can actually do some different stuff with it, but because the green screen has a sloped bottom, getting to that light, which was installed before the green screen was put into place, is a bit of a challenge, so I'm going to have to work on that. But so I run that light a little dimmer, than the others, because if I don't, I wind up having a hot spot in the middle of my green screen, and a hot spot is just as bad as a shadow when trying to do chroma key background replacement. So now that we've got our lights all set where we want them, I want to record this as a cue. And so what I'm going to do is hit the R key and then the letter Q, record cue 1. And I'm going to hit enter. And so now if I come over here into this, remember I said this PSD list is really important, right? If I come over here, you can see Q1, it has a time of 5, but it's not labeled. And so I'm going to give this a label. I'm going to go ahead and hit Q1L for label. And we're going to call this full. I'm going to hit enter. And now you can see Q1 has a time of 5 and it's labeled full. Let's say we wanted to build a cue that was doing silhouette light or something like that. So I just want my backlight, right? So in this case, because I know where all my lights are plugged in, 1 through 7 are front light, 8, 9, and 10 are all backlight. All I have to do is I could stay in this or I could go back to live table. But if I just hit 1, and you can see it comes up channel 1, through 7 at 0, enter, now what I have is just those 3 backlights on. This would be really awful for trying to chroma key, but if we were using a black background or something, this could be interesting. And I'm going to go ahead and record that as backlight. So now we go ahead and hit R for record, Q2, and you can actually label this as you're going. So record Q2, label backlight, enter. And so now we have Q2, which is backlight. Sometimes, though, you may want to change the time of a cue, which on the actual control surface, if you have the console, is really easy. It's really easy using the Nomad software as well, but it's not an intuitive button. So let's say I'm fine with Q1 having a time of 5, but I want Q2 to happen, instead of in 5 seconds, I want it to happen in 2 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Q2, right? So literally the letter Q, the number 2. And then I'm going to hit the I button. I is time. So we're going to go ahead and give that 2 seconds by just hitting the number 2 and hit enter. And so now you can see my time here changed. So if I want to then run through this cue list, it's really easy. If you just hit Control G, and I'm going to go to 0 first off. So go to Q0, enter. Q0 should always be just straight, everything goes out, right? Now what I can do is I could hit Control G to jump to whichever cue I wanted, or I can just hit the space bar and it will automatically go to the next cue. You can see Q1 takes 5 seconds to come on. And when I'm ready for Q2, all I have to do is once again hit the space bar. And now we jump to our dimmer, our backlight, and it takes 2 seconds to get there. And really, that's the vast majority of what you need to know to control lighting in a TV studio scenario. You need to know what circuit the light is plugged into. You need to know what channel you want it to be. You tell your Nomad software that information. It then transmits when you're doing stuff, transmits the dimmers, transmits the circuits, and does all kinds of interesting things. Now, there are instruments that do not use dimmers or that have multiple parameters, and we'll talk about some of those kinds of things in a different video. But for right now, I mean, just the basic startup, this is what you got to do. You got to tell it what to do, and then you record it doing it, and it'll do it for you just by hitting the button. Before I let you go here, the last thing you need to know how to do is how do you actually save this? Because while I could close this down and it would probably all be there next time, there's no guarantee of that. So we're going to go ahead and File, Save. You really want to save? Okay. We're going to call this Nomad Demo. It'll default to my show file archive. And now my show is saved. And if I want to close all of this down, all I have to do is go ahead and click on, if I collapse this menu, exit, okay. And that's it. That's pretty much how you do all of the basic stuff with the ETC Nomad. Now, again, there's a lot more that it can do, and I will include a link to all of the hotkeys and commands and all of that. But that's pretty much it. So, go light up the world and keep shooting.